Welcome to the 2021 Red Robin podcast, Hull Kingston Rovers season review with myself, Joe Appleyard, co-host Chris Johnson. And in the first part of the show, we are delighted to announce special guest, Sky Sports reporter Jenna Brooks. Jenna, really appreciate you coming on the show. How are you doing?
I'm really well, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited. To be honest, the last couple of days, I haven't really known what to do with myself. It's been such a long, intense year. And then when it just all finishes, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I can take a breath now. But I'm very good. And as I said, delighted to be joining you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Obviously, we'll go into the grand final. You've had a busy few weeks. You was in Perpignan, so was I. We'll speak about that semi-final. But before we start, obviously, the guys who watch you on the telly will know a little bit about you. But I think the problem that we have in the Northern Hemisphere is we don't have enough guys from Australia and New Zealand, coming over. We have the players, but we don't really have commentaries coming over or reporters coming over. So for yourself, firstly, how did you end up over in the UK? And how did you get involved in sports media and especially Sky Sports Rugby League?
So I got involved in sports media. I guess growing up, I've always been really sporty. I played, I pretty much tried every sport there was. And I fancied myself as a bit of a runner and a swimmer. And I had this lifelong dream of representing Australia in the Olympics. I wasn't good enough. That never happened. So I ended up, after school, I did a journalism degree. And I think I graduated from uni on the Friday, and I started working at Channel 9 at the Wide World of Sports the following Monday in like an entry-level position. I was like a production secretary, so kind of worked on the front desk at the Wide World of Sports, which was brilliant. And it kind of just grew from there. So I was there a couple of months, and then I started hassling the reporters. And one reporter in particular, I'm not sure, you probably wouldn't have heard of him. He's on Fox League now. He left Channel 9 to join Fox Sports. Tim Sheridan. He was an absolute mentor of mine. He used to take me out on shoots, and he would do his job and then have me kind of shadow him and kind of do my bit to camera and kind of practice writing scripts and practice doing pieces to camera and all of that. And then I got a job working for Fox Sports News. I was there for a few years and then moved off to SBS, which is like a free-to-air network, and I was the sports reporter for them. And then my husband, who at the time was my boyfriend, he got a transfer with his job. Now, he works in finance, so completely different industry, but he got a transfer to San Francisco. And he made the move over. I think it must have been in 2010. Excuse me. Sorry. And he made the move in 2010. We kind of did a distance thing for 6 months. I finished my contract with SBS. And then I moved over and we were there for about 3 years. And I think probably the final year that we were there, I started working as a freelancer for Comcast Sportsnet, which is similar to ESPN, but I guess more regional, covering just Bay Area teams. So the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors. In fact, we were pretty lucky because while we were there, the Giants, who hadn't won anything in years, I think they won 3 World Series. So it was awesome. Anyway, so started to kind of make waves in San Francisco. And then my husband said, oh, I've been transferred to London. So kind of had to start all over again in London. But I do have to say I was pretty thrilled to move to the UK because, my background, growing up, my father played rugby league. My grandfather played rugby league. So I didn't really ever have a choice. It was always kind of in the blood. I used to play like representative touch and Oztag, never full contact. I couldn't tackle a ham sandwich, if I'm honest. But yeah, so I was delighted to kind of come to London because I knew, of the Super League, and I used to follow it from a distance from back home. I used to, watch the Challenge Cup finals and all of that. But anyway, so I got a gig at Sky Sports News and then met Steve-O and kind of pushed my way onto the rugby league team and have never looked back since. So I have the best job in the world and I know how lucky I am. And I love it. I go to work with a big smile on my face and I get to watch rugby league and I get paid for it. It's a dream.
Literally the dream job. Obviously, you speak about Eddie and Steve. That's all we knew for many years on the TV. Them guys, you know what? I think you don't appreciate good commentators sometimes, and them guys got a lot of stick. But I think now with the transition, you've got the likes of Stuart Pike coming. Obviously, you'll work with all them guys, but especially Eddie and Steve, they're one of the, I think, the voices of English rugby league, aren't they? What are they like to work with?
Oh, absolutely. They're iconic. They're the best. I miss them so much. I'm still in touch with both of them. We did the walk and talk for Mossy Masoi. I did it with Eddie, and they're legends of the game. They're beautiful people. I think Steve-O misses it. Eddie says he doesn't. I don't know if I believe him, but they're wonderful people. And you're right, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. And I do remember when I first got over here and kind of got into social media, and people were just horrible. People can be horrible on social media. I guess it's another story for another day. But now it's funny, you see comments and people are wishing that they were back, and people miss them. Like they're wonderful people. And it's really thanks to Steve-O actually that I got onto this team. He kind of put me in touch with the right people, and I just hounded them, and I kept going. The squeak, what's the saying? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. That was me. I just kept knocking on the doors until someone gave me a chance. And you know, I wasn't even getting paid. I don't know if you guys probably don't remember, but my first kind of entry into the rugby league team was doing this news segment as part of the build-up on a Thursday night. It was like a 3-minute news thing that I'd produce and present from the London studios, and it would go out ahead of kickoff on the Thursday night. And that was all thanks to Steve-O, like Steve-O putting me in touch with Neville Smith, who at the time was the big boss of the rugby league team. And I still hear from Steve-O. Like he was at the grand final. I was meant to actually interview them. They've both got a podcast as well, in fact, it's a good listen. It's a very good listen. But they were up in the hospitality, and I was meant to interview them both, but because we had the hour and a half build up, we just ran out of time, and I couldn't get up there. But yeah, Steve-O will message me after a game and be like, that was a good interview, but you should have done this. Or, you know, you need to be doing, you know, less talking, Jenna. People don't want to hear from you. People want to hear from the players. Quick questions. Like, he's constantly giving me feedback, and I'll be forever grateful for Steve-O, and I just adore Eddie. So yeah, they're two absolute legends of the game.
Yeah, great. And then, you know, obviously there's probably people listening to this wondering about how they get into media, and especially sports media, which is, I'm guessing, such a competitive field. And no doubt it's probably the second best thing to play in the sport, isn't it? Being in and around it, and being in and around the players and then the coaches and all that kind of stuff. But if we fast forward through to last season and this season, and obviously the effects what COVID had on rugby league, and the effect COVID had on us all as a society. How difficult was it covering the sport, and how difficult did it make your job? You know, not being able to get close to the players, not being able to go down to training and be at matches, etc. How difficult was it for you?
It was so difficult, and even this season has been probably more difficult. I was looking, I put a post up at the end of last season, and we covered something like, oh gosh, what was it? It was something like 48 games in 4 months. So we obviously showed pretty much every single game live because it was behind closed doors. So and that was something I don't think a lot of fans understand, but that was something that Sky did. Sky, we didn't have to do that, but that was June Fairhurst, who's the boss now of rugby league at Sky. That was her decision, and we were all completely on board, because had it not been for us showing these games, then fans, it would have been very difficult for supporters to kind of see their team in action. So it was hard. Like we were doing 6 games in 2 days most weeks last year. So it was hugely exhausting, but at the same time, sitting there and not having any supporters in the stadiums, it was something that I'll never forget. As a fan, as a passionate rugby league supporter, lover of the game, I'd sit there and these players were just going to war every week. And I was one of the very few that were in the stadium actually watching it live. And I just got so much more out of it from a reporter as well. From a reporter's perspective, I was able to hear the chat out on the pitch. I was able to hear what the coaches were saying to, like, what their messages were. Whereas now it's so, you know, with a crowd, of course, it's so loud, you don't ever get any of that. You could also hear the intensity and the brutal hits. Like, it was something that I may never experience again, but I'll never forget. In terms of the challenges that even like this year, I said this year was more complicated, more challenging than last year. At least last year I could hear I had that distance, that 2 meter distance between myself and the person I was interviewing, but there was no one in the stands. So you could kind of hear, they could hear me. This year, I'm sure you all remember the Tony Smith interview the other week.
Yeah,
it's horrendous.
Yeah,
and people don't understand. Like, there's so many. Again, sorry guys, I am recovering from a cold. I don't have COVID. I've been testing every day, but I do have a bit of a sore throat, so I apologize for coughing. But yeah, the interview with Tony Smith, I mean, people don't understand that we're not choosing to do it this way. This is protocol. This is what we have to do. I can't be down the tunnel anymore. So in 2019, I was in the tunnel. I was with the players. I was going up, speaking to players. I was speaking to coaches directly. This year and last year, I'm in the amber zone. So I'm not allowed in the tunnel. We can't conduct these interviews. Like Tony, I think, suggested, can't we be doing this inside where it's not so noisy? Well, no, we can't. We're not allowed. COVID protocol won't let us do that. So there's limitations there, and just being able to hear each other. It's been such a challenge, and I know at times hugely awkward interviews, but we're just doing our best.
Yeah. Maybe Tony's just a bit hard of hearing as he gets older, a bit older. I think that's the problem. But obviously, Jenna, we see you on screen, and people might think, you know, all you do is the interviews, or they see you on screen for short snippets. But obviously, that's not just all you do, is it? What kind of stuff do you do in the build up to games, and what's like a typical week for you in the build up to a game?
So a typical week for me, so if the games are, say, Thursday, Friday, so not a lot of people know this, but actually I'm based in London. So I used to be staff at Sky Sports News, so that was kind of my full-time job, and then I would do bits and pieces for the rugby league department. And then 2 weeks before we went into that first lockdown last year in March, I got this job full-time. So that was amazing timing, because then Sky put a freeze on promotions and kind of making putting like a freeze on hiring staff. So I kind of just got this job in the nick of time. But so I don't really know what a normal, like pre-COVID, what this role would have entailed, because I've never done it. But since COVID, like, I work from home unless I'm obviously at the game. So Monday is usually kind of a prep day. If I'm involved in the Golden Point podcast, which is our Sky Sports Rugby League podcast that we do, we usually record that on either a Monday or a Tuesday. But it's just like through the week, it's pretty much prepping, guys. Like I do a lot of prep. People don't realize, like, I try and let's be honest, rugby league in this country, there's not a lot of stuff out there like online about players, about teams, about coaches. So I just try and read everything I can. I'll always try and speak to the coaches myself, not as part of the presser, the weekly presser. I'll try and speak to them and just get a different take on what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And I try and do that the day before the game, just so it's fresh. And then I've got something else to add, not just the typical stuff that's been said at the weekly pressers and what all the press journos have kind of got. So I do that. I often write articles, features on players. I used to do like an NRL kind of talking points article as well. So just that kind of stopped mid-year just because things got too hectic with what we were doing this year. I do stuff for Sky Sports News, so preview pieces for them. I'll try and interview the pundits, get their take on what the games are, what the fixtures are, the talking points, who to look out for. So it's a lot of just trying to promote the game. And then on a Thursday morning, I'll make my way up north, get to the game. We're usually at the game, try and get there for, say kickoffs at 7:45. We're usually on air at 7. So I try and get in for like, say, 3 o'clock. We then have a production meeting. We talk about what we're going to cover, you know, what the talking points are for that week. And then it's a lot at the moment. It's a lot of just sitting in your car. Like I do my hair and makeup in the car. It's so glamorous. TV is so glamorous, guys. And then I'll stay up on the Thursday night and then travel to wherever the game is on the Friday. And then I usually head back to London Friday after the game. And then Saturday, Sunday are pretty quiet, like low-key days. And then you kind of start all over again.
I suppose next year you can get yourself in Craven Street if you've got a bit of time to kill. That seems very bad. Obviously, all Kingston Rovers on and off the field soon. But two people that deserve a mention, two heroes of rugby league for totally different reasons, is Rob Burrow and Mossy Massoy. Obviously, Mossy's affiliated to ourselves with the podcast being All Kingston Rovers. I was actually commentating on the game when he did his back, and we didn't meet, myself and the co-commentator at the time didn't have a clue. We had to fill 15, 20 minutes. We thought it was your head knock, and then still watch it back now. And I remember the moment you realise that it was serious, and you can see the likes of Wella Araki, Matt Parcell, looking around, speaking to each other. How have you seen him, Rob Burrow fighting Emin? We've seen Kev Sinfield do the 7-in-7, the marathons. You guys doing the rowing, the walking. Rugby league in the United Kingdom doesn't get enough praise, and it's not the biggest sport. We're competing with rugby union, football, cricket, darts and boxing, even sports like that. But the rugby league community, Jenna, you'll see it more than us working with Barry and Terry and Bill for all the commentators. How much has them two guys inspired you, never mind the nation? And how emotional was it when Mossy walked out at Castleford, Burrow doing that interview with Kevin Aguama? You know, for you, that must have been up there, one of the highlights of your career, that Kevin Aguama interview, because we was watching at home and it was emotional watching it, never mind you being the interviewer.
Sure, I can't, it hasn't really even registered yet. Like I have watched it back. And everything like post-match stuff happens so quickly. So it's all just reactive, isn't it? Like you've got no idea what's going to happen. So with that interview, what the plan was whoever was the Harry Sunderland winner would come over. I would do the post-match interview. Then I would introduce Rob, Lindsay and Macy, who were presenting the award to Player of the Match. But before that happened, I was meant to have a quick word with Lindsay. And that was the plan. I mean, you've got plans in TV and with live TV, you just don't know how it's going to go. And as I said, you just have to react. And I remember like Kevin came over. So there was all the celebs. So I found out with the grand final as well, because it's not done by Sky. It's done like outside of Sky. So I only found out that it was Kevin probably like maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes before the game was over. So post-match celebrations happen, and of course a grand final, emotions are high. You know, there's tears, there's celebrations. Kevin starts making his way over. He's constantly getting stopped. He then finally gets over and he's in tears at that point. But he's okay. Like he's not properly like broken down at that point. He then looked over and saw Rob. And this is my view. I could be wrong. Like maybe if you spoke to Kevin Aguama, maybe it wasn't like this. But this is from my point of view what I saw. I think he must have forgotten that Rob was presenting the Harry Sunderland trophy. And I saw him look over at Rob. And that was when he went down to the ground and crouched down in like proper tears. And within a couple of seconds, I hear Brian in my ear throw down to me. And I'm like, oh, this is such a special moment. I just knelt down and we did the interview. And then he stood up after the interview. And then I went to speak to Lindsay, and then Lindsay came over, and then Kevin went over to Rob and said what he said to Rob, which was just absolutely spot on and amazing. And I'm so glad that we were able to catch that on camera and on the mic, because it was just spot on. And again, it just goes to show and I know I'm biased because I work in this sport, I've grown up loving this game, but rugby league is the best sport in the world, hands down. And it's just another example, like it's a family. It's not even a sport. It's a family. We all get behind people in need. We all, are there to support. You mentioned the Row for Rob. We've got Burrow 7. We did the walk and talk for Mossy. There's a dinner on October 30th for Mossy Masoy, trying to raise as much money as possible because he and his family leave to move back to Australia in November. It's all just amazing the last couple of years since, Rob got diagnosed, since Mossy's horrendous injury. We've just seen this incredible side of rugby league that it's fascinating, it's honourable, I'm just so proud to be part and to work in the game. And I'm sure you guys probably feel the same way, to be involved as supporters, as amazing podcast hosts covering the game. It's just fantastic. But they're two absolute warriors of the game, aren't they, Rob and Mossy?
Yeah, and you're saying all the right words, Jenna. So don't worry about that. You can continue. But no, I think what rugby league is unique in is that it brings together so many people, from the players to the media to spectators, and you've seen that how many different clubs have raised funds for both Mossy and Rob. You've seen people in the amateur game doing incredible things, and I can't think of any other sport where you'd see that unity and togetherness, and maybe it's unique to this country as well, because I wonder if you'd see that in the NRL. Obviously it's a totally different competition almost, but
well, to be fair, the NRL have got behind Mossy, haven't they? They did
dedicated the round. Yeah,
they dedicated the round. They have raised a lot of money. A lot of I can't remember the figure. The last time, I think it could have been close to 200,000. Wow. And that's just the NRL. That's not what we've done over here with the Mossy Masoy Foundation. So the NRL also did the Tri Celebs, didn't they? Which was brilliant. I think that was at their Magic Weekend. Every celebration. What's this? The betting company? I've gone blank. But one of the betting companies down there donated $500 to every Tri Celeb for Mossy. And I don't know. I think you could probably say that the NRL would do the same. And with Alex McKinnon, I think they did there was almost a boycott over changing the insurance policy, and they won. The players won. But in terms of football over here, I don't know. I've never seen it. I've never seen anything like this, so I can't answer that question. But I'm just so proud of the rugby league community on this side of the world, and down under as well, because they really have gotten behind Mossy and Rob, and it's just pride that I feel to be associated with the game.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And if we move on to Rovers and Hull Kingston Rovers this season, and obviously it's been our best season since 2008. We've got 80 minutes away from Old Trafford, which is incredible. I think me and Joe, first ones to admit at the start of the season, we didn't see this coming whatsoever. And the boys have really dug deep and put some standout performances. I wonder, with you covering a number of the games on Sky this season, Jenna, how impressed you have been with Rovers and the style of rugby league that they've been playing.
Oh, so impressed. We have absolutely loved covering Hull KR. I think Brian said this when we were last at a home game. What as well the club's done off the pitch with Craven Street. It's fantastic. The way we saw glimpses of it last year, didn't we? There was obviously no relegation on the line, so they were playing freely, an amazing attacking style without risk. But this year, there was just that added confidence and belief, and they just continue to defy the odds. You guys are huge Hull KR supporters, and you didn't even think that they'd get to the Final Four. But the players did. I remember speaking to Corbin Sims at that Lee game. It must have been, I don't know when it was now. Everything's kind of blurred into one, but it was a few months ago.
August, Jenna, I think.
Yeah, August. And I said to him, is there talk of Old Trafford? And he's like, oh, yeah, we're going. We 100% know we can go. There was just so much belief all season. And every game, people that they went into every game as the underdogs pretty much. And, you know, I mean, that game at Warrington to make it to the semi-finals, like that was incredible. The Tony Smith is, I think he's so unlucky not to have won Coach of the Year. They went from wooden spooners last year to the Final Four this year, and the injuries, the players that you were missing. I mean, it's incredible what they achieved, and the future looks so bright as well. You've got your young, like Mikey Lewis. How good was Mikey Lewis? That try he scored against Warrington, one of the best tries this year. Rowan Mill, like all of the, like Will Dagger, all the young players stood up, and then Sean Kenny Dow. I mean, I think I read before the semi-final. I think the semi-final was his 42nd straight game. He hasn't missed a game. Yeah. Like, what a leader! And then when he injured his foot, he played on, and he played well. Like he's a star. I mean, Ryan Hall, awesome signing. How many tries did he end up getting? 15 or something?
Yeah,
15 tries. I just think 2022 looks great. Lachlan Coote coming in. He doesn't know what it feels like to lose a Super League grand final. He's going to add more experience, more confidence. And, you know, I spoke to a lot of the players throughout the year, usually about Tony Smith, and a lot of them described him not as a coach, but as a mate, as a friend. And I think that's important to have, because it's just so clear that he trusts his players, and he tells them to play what they see, and that's exactly what they do. And 99% of the time it comes off. Like, I haven't even mentioned Jordan Abdul yet. How have I not mentioned Jordan Abdul? Just incredible. Like, as fans, what do you guys think they're going to do next year?
Oh, it's tough, Chris, isn't it? You know, good question. I think the problem is you can have second season syndrome, can't you? Look at Salford when they got to the grand final, and then there was in the bottom four again the year after. I think what we want, Chris, is really just to kick on. And when we film all our podcasts, we try and be as positive as we can. Obviously, it helps that we've been really good this year. But I think what I want, I don't know about you, Chris, is we don't expect to be this top two team. We need to get away from being dragged into that relegation battle. We saw that this year. We saw what the entertainers we got called. We saw what we can do. But if Rovers can keep beating the teams around them, and we did the double over weekend, we beat Leeds comfortably at home. But then you look at the games that we've lost, and we've gone to Wakefield and got hammered, gone to Huddersfield and lost. And no disrespect to them teams, at the time when we played them, we had everything to play for, and they had nothing to lose. And sometimes you can, get defeated against them teams, Chris. I don't know about you, but for me, it's just kicking on. We need to keep injury free, that typical cliche. But Rovers have definitely got a great chance to be in the playoffs again next year, mate. I think Lachlan Coote's an astute signing. I think if he can work with Mikey, Jordan Abdul, Jeslett and Matt Parcell, Elliot Minchella coming back at 13 with Dean Hadley, who both suffered season-long injuries. The future looks bright, Chris, doesn't it? Especially with that span that we're assembling.
Yeah, you can't be anything but positive. I do think it'll be probably one of the most competitive Super League seasons next season. I think there's a number of clubs who have not performed how they would like to have done this season, and you look at some of the recruitment that's been done, particularly by such as Leeds, Castleford. It's going to be a really, really tough league next year. But I think Rovers don't have any fear, and we've got talent in abundance, and some of the players who have not performed too well are Brad Takarangi, Corbin Sims, Albert Vette. I think they're going to hit the ground running next season. I really think they're going to hit the ground running.
I thought Brad Takarangi had a great season. I remember Tony Smith saying in one of the post-match interviews that we've not even seen like half of what he's capable of. So that's exciting. That's a good shout, Chris.
And I think you've just hit the nail on. And Tony Smith said, didn't he, that we've not even seen half of him yet. So I think, because Andy's also played a number of positions for us this season, which I think he needs a good run at centre, which is probably his favourite position. But there's so much more to come from these boys, and I think that's what really excites us going forward into next season.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for Hull KR. I saw some of the betting odds for next season today. I think St Helens are the overwhelming favourites, which isn't a surprise, but I think Hull KR were kind of middle. But I wouldn't be surprised if they again made at least the top 4. I know you mentioned Salford, but Salford made the Super League grand final, and then they did back up in the sense of Wembley, didn't they?
Yeah.
But I really think Tony Smith knows what it takes to win big games, and he's bringing that to Hull KR.
We hope so, don't we? And obviously it was announced, Jenna, a few days ago that the assistants, obviously David Hodgson, one of the record try scorers in Super League, Stanley Jean, a Hull KR legend, and Danny Mcguire, probably the greatest Super League player of all time. You know, we saw him at the back end of his career, but him, Burrow, Sinfield, Peacock, everyone at Leeds just idolises Danny Mcguire, and I think he's come to Hull Kingston Rovers. He gave us a bit of vision on the field. We obviously didn't see the best of him. He was 35 and 36 in the 2 seasons he was wearing the red and white. But as a coach, them 3, I think, as their assistants are vital, and hopefully we can see. And I think what you'll notice as well, Tony Smith seems to have got his spark back. He spent plenty of years out of the game. Obviously, Matt coached Great Britain, England, won stuff with Warrington and Leeds. And I feel like he's developing this club now to maybe head towards the heights of Old Trafford and Wembley. And I think he's really bought into Hull Kingston Rovers. And I know us as fans and us listeners and the rest of the East Hull faithful have definitely bought in to what Tony Smith has brought. And I think Danny Mcguire, Stanley Jean and Dave Hodgson has as well. What's your opinion on the man, Tony? Obviously, he does his interviews. We could beat Hull FC 16-0. He'd go, yeah, but it could have been 66. We need to work on things. I think that's the sign of a great coach. He doesn't settle for second best. He wants us to be better every week. I remember when we beat Wigan, you did the interview with him. His first thing was, we was flat in the second half. We got lucky. Not the fact we've just beat Wigan and we were sitting 5th in the table at the time. He seems a really good bloke, Jenna.
Oh, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on a Hull KR kind of fan podcast, but he's one of my favorite coaches to interview. You're right. Whatever kind of question I give him, he kind of always not argues with me, but always kind of he never agrees with me, put it that way. And I could say they underperformed today. He'll be like, no, I thought they had a great game, or that it was a great game from the boys. They didn't get the win. He'll be like, no, I wasn't happy with it. We were flat. Like, he will always disagree with what I have to say, but I like that. He's he's one of my favorite coaches to interview because I never know what I'm going to get. But I do like him. I like him as a person. I like him as a coach. I think with him, guiding that team, I think that it's only going to be positive, and it's only going to grow from where they are at the moment.
Yeah, let's hope so. We've got a few more questions, Jenna. Chris has got some as well. But I just want to ask you about the French connection, as we'll call it. Obviously, when we asked you to come on the podcast, we didn't know who was going to be joining the likes of Hull KR, Wigan Saints in Super League. It was either Toulouse or Featherstone. We know it is the team from the south of France. You was at Perpignan for that semi-final. So was I. I was lucky enough to get over to the south of France. There was only about 50 of us. That atmosphere, I did an interview for the local radio and mentioned how it was a bit like Rocky when he goes to fight Ivan Drago in Russia. That atmosphere, I felt very outnumbered, but in a good way. I think that's what we need. And people go on about expansion with Toulouse. It's another expansion club. It's not going to work. It's not at all. Toulouse have been going since the 1930s, I believe. They're a passionate crowd. There was 9,000 people there. That's nearly 8,000 more than the likes of Cass and Wakey and Huddersfield. In my opinion, and for yours yourself, you'll get a few more trips to the south of France. It's lovely down there. When we was in the Championship, I went to Toulouse, and I do, from a fan's perspective, I think I prefer Toulouse to Perpignan. Obviously, people have different opinions, but there's 2 French teams now. How good is it for the game? How good is it for that French derby? And it'll probably make Magic Weekend a lot more interesting. I'd like to see the derbies come back. I don't know about you.
Oh, I would absolutely love it. And I do hope that we get to go. You mentioned Perpignan. That was the first time I'd ever been, like, full stop, to cover a game or even just to visit.
It was manic, wasn't it? It was mad.
It was, I don't even know how to describe it, because it was like, I've been to some big games in my lifetime, particularly in the NRL, and nothing compares. And even James Maloney, Sam Tompkins, these guys have played in huge games. They were blown away. They're like, you couldn't see an arm length in front of you. There was red smoke, yellow smoke, the noise. It was just what rugby league's, what every game of rugby league should be. Yeah. And I think it's so exciting that Toulouse are up. I am glad, like, obviously I feel bad for Featherstone, but I think it's, the best team came up. They're ready to compete now. I know that they'll be doing some recruiting. I don't know how many players they need to recruit. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're a team that could now compete in Super League. The derbies between those two teams, I mean, the French media got on the back of Catalan's success this year. When I was there, they were on the front page of the local newspaper. They did have like a 5-page spread in another newspaper. And then for the grand final, there were so many French journos that were at the presser. They followed them around. Like it's you're right, that this game, there's people who really love rugby league want to see this game expand. Toronto, what happened with Toronto was a huge shame. It was I personally thought it was terrible for rugby league as a whole. Having Toulouse and having Catalan up competing, I think it's only good for the game. And I notice in Australia, like I speak to a lot of, obviously having worked in the media down there, I still keep in contact with a lot of reporters and people that work in the NRL, and they still refer to the Super League over here as the English Super League. I'm like, it's the European Super League, and it's even more so now because we've got 2 French sides in, and I think it's only going to be a huge positive for the game. I'm excited.
Yeah, I think it is really exciting. One of my Joe's bugbears is that we spend so much time as supporters talking about the governance and the structure of rugby league, etc. And I think sometimes we forget about the actual product, what happens out on the pitch, and how entertaining rugby league is, and what a spectacle it is. And I think that's what we need to focus more on, and less about, whether expansion's a good thing and who's playing where and all that kind of stuff. Let's just focus on what's on the pitch, because that's what gets bums on the seats. That's what gets people interested in the game, not where you've got a team or who's playing who, where, or anything like that. So one thing I just did want to finish with, and before we wrap up, Jenna, is your experience of the Hull derby, and how many, is it just one game that you'll have been to with spectators there?
Of a Hull derby? No. I would have gone to, let me see.
Oh, you'll be doing Saints Wigan?
Yeah, no. Sorry, in terms of derbies as a whole, or a Hull derby? The
Hull derby, yeah.
Yeah, so I obviously did the ones behind closed doors, but the one at the KCOM or the MKM, I always forget what it's called now, the MKM, that was, with fans, and it was great. It was fantastic. I stupidly wasn't really thinking the wardrobe situation, right? I turn up I've got a red sweater on and black pants, and I was getting absolutely crucified. I did have white shoes on, so I made sure I was getting horrible comments, not horrible, but questionable comments on social media when I did my cross, and all they could see was like waist up. And so I had to put a full length picture of my shoes. I'm like, well, hang on a second. I've got a red top, I've got black pants and white shoes. So I'm kind of covered. But no.
I don't see what the problem is, do you, Joe? I think that's perfect.
I think if it was FC fans giving you stick, it's probably because you had 2 shoes on, Jenna, and not many of them have ever experienced.
Yeah, they won't be used to.
So sorry, you go, Jenna. Sorry, that was us being very petty.
Well, I certainly learnt my lesson, but like red is my favorite color. I love red. So I need to put more thought into my wardrobe choices when I'm attending certain derbies, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But Jenna, it's been great to speak to you. Thank you for giving up your time. We really appreciate it, don't we, Chris? And it's been great to speak to you. Hopefully next year we might be able to get you on again. Rovers in a grand final and St George in a final as well. Obviously, we know that's your NRL team. What's your hopes for the Illawarra next year?
They're not optimistic.
Has George Burgess gone back?
Yeah.
I mean, George Burgess was great in his heyday, but he hasn't played for 2 years, is it now? I mean,
he's had like a hip surgery.
Yeah.
He was meant to be retired from the game.
Yeah.
I'm so confused. I've got no idea. I think we just signed Aaron Woods as well.
All right, yeah.
Very I'm not optimistic at all. if I'm going to put it bluntly. I wasn't this year, and I'm probably even less optimistic for 2022 for the Dragons. So I think it's fair to say Hull KR will probably be in a grand final before my Dragons.
Well, you said your favourite colour's red, so you can support Rovers if we ever get final. Decent George in there one day as well. But Jenna, it's been so good to speak to you. Thank you for giving us your time, and we really appreciate that you've been listening to the podcast before and all your support.
Oh, Joe, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure. I will come on anytime you like. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Jenna. Chris, it's been really good, and a really good experience.
Yeah, it has, and like you say, we just wish you all the best for next season, Jenna, and keep going, and hopefully you don't get any too many tricky customers, and everyone's more like Tony Smith.
Thanks, fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you, guys. So that was the first part of the 2021 Red Robin podcast season review. Me and Chris will be back in a minute to go for all our awards and speak about the season as a whole. But thank you to Sky Sports' Jenna Brooks. Speak soon, Jenna.
Bye.